Hey, what is up everyone? Today I'm taking a look at the Dragon Momoko 1100 Gundam DEATHSCYTHE. And I don't even know really where to start with this, so I guess I might as well start right back at the beginning. And this right here is a bootleg Gundam, as in a copy, a fake, not licensed. But I've always loved how cool this particular variant of Gundam DEATHSCYTHE looks. It kind of looks a little bit like it does in the anime with that killer ribcage, but at the same time we've got this awesome new design, spiky parts everywhere, and it just looks downright awesome. I did not know what to expect with this particular kit because I haven't built much in the line of bootlegs. I've built the bootleg variant of the metal build Strike Freedom I featured on here before. That was a killer kit and I really did like the way it looks. It's front and center in my collection right now because it is so over the top. I've also built the Zero Gravity Judge, which is an absolutely phenomenal kit, and some people do like to debate whether or not that is actually a bootleg kit because it is pretty much an entirely original design. It's great too. Check out the review if you have not yet. So I wanted to continue the adventure, and that's when I came to this. So first off, Dragon Momoko was shut down in 2017 directly by Bandai, I think. Funnily enough, this kit is also from 2017, and funnily enough, they stuck a copyright on the box. I mean, Dragon Momoko, what are you trying to all rights reserve here? You've got no rights to nothing. That, right there, is like a Monster Hunter logo. Anyway, how about the model kit? Well, so I wanted to jump on the super popular ASMR build for gunpla bandwagon, and I kind of thought this would be a nice place to start. It's unique. It's different, and I'm sure a lot of people will be interested in how this actually builds up, but man, it didn't go well. It actually went a little like this.
I'm back! I'm Spooky the Neck Gremlin, and I have the power! The power to hack all of your passwords, all of the time! Look at you, yeah, you just kicking back, chilling, and logging into yet another website using your Facebook account because it's quick and easy. You know what else is quick and easy? Me stealing that Facebook account and using it for evil! With this account, I can now log into all of your accounts online. Your name, address, bank details, all mine. And you think that's bad? No friend. I'm not just going to rob you blind. I'm also going to commit identity theft, commit crimes in your name, and maybe take out some loans using your details. Oh crap, he's got NordPass. Damn it, NordPass is more than a password manager. It's the essential cybersecurity tool that makes everyone's life easier and safer. You can store all your passwords in one place. NordPass has an autofill feature, generates secure passwords, and you can even find out if your account has been hacked with the data breach scanner. And you can get 50% off a NordPass premium plan at nordpass.com/Mecha, and you can get an additional month for free. And it has a 30-day money-back guarantee. I better go hack someone who doesn't have NordPass.
Yeah, and it was at this point right here that I realized this kit cannot be snap built, especially not in a kind of rhythmic, interesting, clippy, clacky, brain good feeling kind of way, mainly because the parts don't snip together, so I'm gonna have to go back to my old build style explanation situation. So, this kit is absolutely horrendous to build, so if you're just a snap builder, avoid at all costs. You're going to need a lot of tools for this. You're going to need to drill every single peg in this thing, every single one of them. You're going to have to change every fitting. This needs modification on every single part. There's a lot of segments in here that are lifted right from Bandai's own kits, and they're lifted okay, but they just do not clip together. Nothing clips together. Honestly, this kit would almost be better if the pegs didn't fit at all, like they were too big, and you actually cemented this thing together old school airfix kind of way. That would have been so much easier than actually have to drill every hole, then potentially end up cementing everything together. The plastic quality on this is all over the place, so the black on this is a thick ABS. It almost reminds me of the Nekobuso kits I would have looked at before, as in really thick and very unpleasant, but it doesn't have the robust nature of that plastic. This cracks easy, so be careful. The grey plastic in here is okay, the red plastic is okay too, and then the yellow is phenomenal. I mean, the yellow on this is really nice, and pops as well. The colors are great. What isn't great is, I think this kit gave me stage 6 finger cancer. And I'm not joking. This thing is covered in all sorts of this weird shite. And I'm gonna assume this is that ever-elusive mold release agent or mold release or whatever it's called that a lot of people mention you need to wash off your Bandai kits, and then some other people say you don't because they don't use it. Well, this stuff is manky. My hands just got dirtier and dirtier and dirtier until I moved to wearing a pair of gloves. Yeah, this thing was nasty to say the least. Yeah, wash it. And by the way, it's a bootleg company from what, China? So I'm not sure if even what's in the plastics would be, you know, up to protocol for the rest of the world, if you get what I mean. I'm not sure if it was psychosomatic, but I started getting a kind of a dry throat while building this, and yeah, not cool. So yeah, like with every experience I've had with the other 2 bootleg kits I've built, well, not necessarily the Zero Gravity, that was quite good, but with the Metal Build Style Strike Freedom, while I was building at it, I hated it. It just doesn't have that fun clip, snip and snap kind of way that you get with gunpla that's just so satisfying to build. Every single part needs to be drilled, and it just took forever to build and nothing fit together. It was not fun. But what I ended up with in the end was a fairly savage looking model kit, and all those minor issues that kind of remained from putting it together fairly badly just kind of melted away, and it does look really cool. I'm gonna get this side by side with Bandai's offering of a Deathscythe Hell, and you'll see the difference. It even feels, in a way, or a lot of ways, better. But anyway, let's jump right on in to the aesthetics. So before we take a look at the Gundam Deathscythe itself, let's take a look at what comes inside of the box. So as well as Deathscythe, we also have the twin beam scythe. This also has a pair of alternate handles in here, which you can have for different lengths and shapes. We've got the Buster Shield, which looks great, but I have to admit I'm recognizing that beam effect from somewhere. When it comes to the hands, we've got a grand total of 8, 6 alternates, as well as the 2 that I have attached onto the Deathscythe. Then we have these 3 parts. These 2 red ones are for changing up the wings a little bit. We've got a base adapter, and lastly in here we've got color correcting stickers and some water slide decals. But before we take a look at all of that, let's take a look at the aesthetics of that Deathscythe Hell. So now jumping right on into the aesthetics, and there's one thing I've noticed all of these third-party kits have been bringing, and that is aesthetics in bucket loads. Sure, the execution here could be a little bit better, but what is this company, Dragon Momoko? They're bootlegging Gundams, they're obviously not a full-blown operation, so this is still impressive, especially visually. The kind of vibe this has given me is what Tamashii Nations tends to do to Gundam designs when they make them into metal builds, and that is what this feels like here. They've elongated a lot of the aspects. The hands and the back of the hands look well, they look like a variant of Destiny Gundam's hands, which they probably are. Those look like Palma Fiocchina, missing the Palma Fiocchina. Compared to what we would see with a standard Bandai kit, this has very elongated limbs. The legs are extremely long and so are the arms, which gives it a very dynamic silhouette. The splash of yellow and red against the black on grey is phenomenal and definitely harkens back to the classic Deathscythe Hell we would have seen so many years ago. As you can see, the active cloak has been removed, so you can see absolutely every aspect of this model kit's anatomy, and I have to say, I am impressed. Once again, execution could be better, which is understandable, but visually, this is amazing. So now jumping in a little bit closer to take a look at some of the details, and as you'd expect with a third-party kit like this, there is a lot of issues out of box, a lot of which I was not actually prepared to deal with in the short amount of time I gave myself to get this video completed. So that does mean there are some issues here and there that if you had a bit more time, you could deal with quite easily. So there is a lot of seam lines where parts just didn't quite fit, and the pegs are so snug, removing them would probably end up breaking it. The black plastic was definitely one of the worst offenders for this sort of thing. It just isn't as nice as the rest. A lot more seam lines, a lot of kind of awkward connections. But like I mentioned, if you put a little bit more time into this, you could deal with those no bother. The strength of the kit is quite good as long as you don't put too much pressure on the black segments. And I have to say, I am blown away by the rib cage on this. It has just such gnarly, visceral Deathscythe hell awesomeness. Again, this is a kit you're going to have to bring your drills, sandpaper, files, cement, everything, the whole arsenal to the table just to build this kit. So keep that in mind. So when it comes to the included stickers in here, the only ones I did use are these ones here on the eyes. Now these are quite similar to what we would see with Bandai kits, but they just don't have the same sort of effect. So sometimes the eye looks like it's drifting. Can you kind of see what I mean? It's not just reflecting from the front like a gunpla kit usually would. It kind of keeps traveling around and kind of looks like he's got like a little bit of a wandering eye. That's because the black seems to be just as shiny as the green, but otherwise not bad. Also in a similar fashion to what we would see with Bandai's kits, this is printed on a kind of a foil sheet, but it's not quite as impressive as what we would see with Bandai, once again as expected. I did not use any of these, a lot of them seem to be for being used up on the wings. We've got alternate ones for with the eyes if you don't want to use the shiny black segment too. And we got some red triangles which were meant to go on the chest and the crotch. So as well as the stickers that we have in here, we also have some water slide decals. Now I only tried using 2 of these. Those are the ones up on the shoulders, and I was actually quite impressed. These are not that bad. Not the worst water slides I've ever used. They soaked up the water well, they lay perfectly flat, and they dried perfectly. Now I don't know how they'll turn out over time, so if you've got a kit like this, or this kit, or a Dragon Momoko kit, let me know how did it hold up over time. So finally getting Bandai's 1100 Deathscythe Hell being the Deathscythe Hell EW side by side with the Dragon Momoko experience, and these are 2 completely different beasts and 2 completely different takes on the Deathscythe Hell, none of which being show accurate. The Dragon Momoko here is ridiculous, it's off the wall entirely with its long yet dynamic proportions, and the Katoki designed EW version is kind of a little bit on the chunky side with a lot of its mass down towards the bottom, mainly being the legs. Both of which are great kits for some reasons and not so great kits for other reasons. When it comes to the Bandai version, it's so clean, it's easy to put together, and it is an all-round very good model kit. When it comes to the Dragon Momoko, it's stylistic as hell, but besides that the build itself is not great. But in the hand, it kind of feels a little bit better, surprisingly. For example, when I wanted to throw the active cloaks on both of them to show them side by side, or should I say, scythe by scythe, this thing just shattered to pieces on me. I wanted the mecha equivalent of Batman, which this turns into, but instead I got a pile of parts. This has loosened up a lot since I built it. I don't find this so much with my standard version of the Deathscythe EW, but hell, well, it's gone to hell. But what if you want something closer to the TV version? Then I guess you've got the Dragon Momoko right here. Now this has the opposite problem. This I can't get the active cloaks onto very well at all. The connection points on this, well, throughout the entire build, I used the needle nose pliers to push a lot of the parts together. They are that tight. This isn't an option up at the shoulders, so these are incredibly tight and there's nothing really to push down on. But when you do get them attached or semi-attached, these hold on rock solid and are a little closer to what we would have seen in the show. But as we've already saw very recently, we did get a high-grade Live Lance Heaven, so more than likely we will be getting a high-grade show accurate Deathscythe Hell. But if you're like me and you like your 1/100s, this might be the closest we're getting. But anyway, it's about time we checked out the rest of the accessories. So in these videos, I do want to drop you guys more questions to answer in the comments, because every time I make a video, the best information is always down in the comments. So I want to know, have you ever built a bootleg kit? And if you did, have you ever built one that completely blew you away? I am open to trying other kits, and like I've mentioned, I've had a mixed experience with bootlegs, so I would love to know if there's any other kits that are just top tier out there, because I want to give them a go. So now jumping right on back to the beginning of the video, and there's absolutely everything that comes in the box when it comes to the accessories, so let's check them all out one by one. So we're going to be taking a look at the hands first, and what we've got straight away is this pair of what looks like Palma Fiocchina. This is just that Destiny Gundam hand, just given a little bit of some alterations. We've got some pointy fingers, and we're lacking the cannon in the palm. I adore these through and through. These are so kick-ass. They're just the right amount of over-the-top edgelord. Widespread, dynamic, pointy and evil. I love these. So next up in here we've got a pair of fists, and I was going to say a standard pair of fists, but these are anything but standard. These are some of the worst looking Gundam hands I've ever seen in my life. These are barely beyond a block. There are some fingers on there, and from a distance you may not notice, but these are so basic is probably the best thing I can say. To make matters even worse, this one here on the left is barely even holding on whatsoever, and considering the Destiny style widespread hand we just looked at fit fine, I'm kind of at a bit of a loss here. Also, the next couple of hands are for using the weapons, so let's get on to the weapons. So moving into the weapons, and the first one and the main event in here is the Double Beam Scythe. Now, just for the sake of comparison, here is the one that comes with Bandai's DEATHSCYTHE Hell EW. So that is two big old beams, but everything is in a fixed position. And I will mention the beams on this glow so nicely. These catch the light in a really unique, very beautiful kind of way. But when you actually get to the one from the Dragon Momoko here, these effects are very basic green. I will mention that there are some odd kind of indiscrepancies, or I don't know what you'd call it, running through the plastic. So this is either like white plastic that has failed to melt, or just maybe clear plastic that has failed to melt entirely, or just something that got into the machine. Not noticeable from a distance. And this actually does have some moving aspects. The smaller beam can swing down like so, and the larger one can move upwards a little bit and then swing over the top for an actual scythe-shaped double beam scythe. So as for this double beam scythe, there is a multiple choice of options for both holding as well as the scythe itself. First off, when it comes to the holding hands, we've got two different sets and a pair of each. So that's a total of 4 holding hands, 2 left, 2 right. We've got these ones right here which hold it at a bit of an angle. As you can see, the ball is pointing backwards there. One is attached for some extended slashing poses. And then we've this style as well, which is your standard, pretty much perpendicular holding wrist. Now, for whatever reason, again, one of these hands fits better than the other. That is the angled one. It holds the shaft perfectly, the other one is loose. And as for the other options for the actual scythe itself, when it comes to the shaft, there are 3 options. This elongated bent one for some over-the-top slashing poses. Then we have a straight standard shaft. This one, of course, is for any fixed poses, just standing there, etc. And then we've got this tiny, tiny little one here, which is a folded variant, basically for when it is compressed down. This is for when it is stored round back here on the butt flap. This would fit in all the way if it didn't have such giant nubs on it, but I'm lazy right now. I think the point gets across. But yeah, if you do want to change these, it's not just plug in, plug out. As you can see, the ends of these are not for pulling out. You know, this shaft don't pull out. But yeah, if you want to change shafts, that means you've disassembled the entire thing. So not really all that user friendly, really. Just pick one. That's what I did. I went for the bent one. So attaching this into the hands is simple. It just slides on into them like so. All the hands attach, ball joint attachment, but I will mention, out of box, this is incredibly loose. You're going to have this supported with 2 hands at a time, or just do what you need to do with a lot of this kit and spend some more time on it, thicken up that ball, and just get this permanently locked the way that you want it. So next up in here, we've got the Buster Shield, which I have to admit is mind-blowingly gorgeous, mainly because the yellow and the red plastic on this kit is some of the nicest looking plastic I've seen in a long time, and This is made primarily out of those colors. We've got so much detail, it's absolutely stunning. The front segments can open and close like a pincer, and this is so nice. Now, I will mention that the Bandai variant, the Endless Waltz variant, does not come with any kind of buster shield. The standard DeathScythe EW does, but I don't have the beam effect lying around to show you a comparison because the beam effect in here is exactly the same. I think it's just recast from the Bandai kit. But as you can see, the plastic in here is not as dynamic, beautiful, or as glowy as what we get with the Bandai kits. It still looks okay though. You can pop this in underneath, and there it is emitting that beam, and I have to say, I'm very impressed by this shield. As for attaching the buster shield, it is super simple. We've got a slot in the arm, we've got a peg in the back of the buster shield, and it just attaches in like so, nice and securely. So as this just attaches right into the side of the arm, it cannot be put into the back or front or anywhere else, and it cannot rotate around. It's always fixed in position. We also have the beam effect in here that just attaches in like we saw before in the underside, and there is what it looks like, ready for business. And that is a beautiful, absolutely gorgeous shield. Last up then in here, we've got a base adapter, and this does exactly what you need it to do. I've had it up on the action base a couple of times already. This holds on good and tight, and it isn't going to go anywhere, which is always a plus. So in a way, that does make it better than some of the offerings that we saw with Bandai's own master grade kits, including the Tallgeese Flugel, and more than likely this action base adapter right here is just a recast of a Bandai one. More than likely. So as I was slapping on the active cloak for, well, showing what that can do, well, it went and snapped. So this tiny little circle here shows the size of the peg that was actually holding the entire side of the active cloak on. So that just outright snapped. So be very careful when attaching this on. It takes a lot of pressure to push it on and not a lot of pressure to break that. So you can know from here on out that my DM DeathScythe Hell's active cloak has been repaired with the toothpick. So anything I had lying around, so I drilled some holes, threw a toothpick in there, and bam, it's working and seems to be holding, so that's the way it's going to stay. So anyway, there is the Dragon Momoko 1/100 scale Gundam DeathScythe Hell, completely loaded up with all of its equipment. That is the active cloak, buster shield, and the scythe. And finally, it is up on a shelf so you can see what it looks like with the collection for that shelf presence test. So without a single doubt, this is one over-the-top looking Gundam, but it is pretty much standard master grade size. The wings do give it a little bit of extra oomph, and that big old scythe will make sure that it stands out. And finally, there it is side by side with another bootleg, which is, I'm not sure once again if it's the Dragon Momoko or the Daban version of the Metal Build Strike Freedom. So yeah, these third-party kits have a whole lot of style. So as for what we can actually do with the active cloak, the first joint we have is one that allows the armored wings to move up and down like so, like a kind of hinge. Now I will mention this is incredibly weak and prone to popping, so be careful. And this also can swing it out and in, just like so. On the underside of all four of these main armored segments, we do have a bunch of moving parts. We've got this large blade-like segment that can swing up and down just like so, and we also have an extending red blade in the end that can extend out and in about 3 or 4 millimeters. We do have a smaller little red blade that can rotate the full 360 degrees all the way around, and finally then we have the upper segment of the wing segment, and that can also rotate on a peg the full 360 degrees. So everything in here can basically be folded in and brought down into a compact form, just like this here. Finally then we've got the outer armors. These are on both sides, they're big, robust, and they can swing up and down like so. These don't have the sort of flimsy hinge we had in the other armors, so not so delicate. As well as that, we've got these bladed segments on the front and back. These are attached by a simple peg, which means that they can rotate round, and that does add a little extra visceral, almost savage element to these armor plates, which looks pretty damn cool. So at this point, I was really going to sing the praises of this cloak quite a bit. Even though it is a little bit weak when it comes to the hinges that we've got on here, it still is quite cool with a lot of range of movement. Now I was going to get it into the full body shield style that you can get with the DeathScythe's active cloak when the second half just out and out popped off. Now I don't feel like drilling and pinning this with another toothpick, so that is a job for another day. So if you want to know what this looks like closed up, well, it looks a little something like this. And I guess I might as well show you the other image that I think is really badass, and that is what the back of this looks like when the water slides are attached. when the cloak is closed. That is a pretty cool design right there. So the final thing you can actually do with the active cloak on this kit is switch it from being an active cloak to a pair of big old badass wings. In order to do this, you just need to pop off the tiny little red spiky segments that have been on the active cloak so far. You then just flip the back two wings from one side to the other, and then you get this right here. This looks killer cool. I'm actually glad that I did pin the second shoulder just so you can see what this looks like, and I will mention at this point that the active cloak is definitely the weakest aspect of this kit, both, well, figuratively and, well, literally. Both sides did end up breaking on me. The design and engineering here is a little bit subpar compared to the rest of the kit, probably because they had nothing to base it on, and they made it from scratch themselves, I assume. But that does mean it is impressive in its own right. It just will need a lot of extra work by yourself out of the box, but it still looks incredible. So finally moving into the articulation, I took off the active cloak because that has been through enough. And as for the actual core robot here, this is quite solid. Now anything that is a bit loose like this elbow right here is my own fault because I over drilled that segment a little bit trying to get the parts to fit. But besides that, if there's any complaints here, it's that things are, well, too tight and feel like they might break. So first up, taking a look at the neck, and sadly no giggity goo here because this just feels like it's only a ball joint. It doesn't move any lower down. And when it does move, it's not fluid. It tends to be a bit restricted, then jump a little bit. But besides that, it does the job and it can look pretty much anywhere you'd want it to. So next up at the shoulder, I'm not sure if there's articulation inside the body here or not, or if this is just the kind of rubbery nature of the plastic. Besides that, we've got the full 360 spin, again, jerky, kind of catches and then flies, catches then flies, and then you can raise up this part of the shoulder armor, and then you can raise the arm all the way up to here, but once again, incredibly stiff. The elbow joint is double jointed, extremely stiff out of the box. I did loosen up both of them by filing the joint down a little bit. So yeah, this gives you quite a bit, and what can I say? It does the job okay. The wrist joint in here is a standard ball joint, does what a ball joint does. Some wrists are tight, some are loose. This one right here is fine. Down at the torso now, we do have a little bit of an ab crunch, but it is very subtle. A little bit back and a little bit forward, and not much side to side. Mainly what you get out of this is a rotation. It does tend to pop off if you over-rotate it because of the design, but it isn't loose. But yeah, mainly rotation down here. Moving down to the side skirting armors now, and these are again very similar to the Master Grade by Bandai because it is heavily based on that particular frame, but I find these don't fall off as readily. They do get blocked just as much. The side skirtings, when you do move them backwards, will pop off because the peg is a rugby ball shaped peg for some reason. Instead of being a standard ball, it's like a rugby ball, so if you turn it sideways, it just automatically comes off. Around on the back then, we've got a double premium butt flap, which is actually quite secure. So now moving the front skirting out of the way a little bit, there is the kick all the way up to the front, so it's not so bad. However, when you try to get it back, this can happen. Now this is exactly the same in the standard Master Grade Deathscythe by Bandai. I find, especially in the Deathscythe Hell version, this happens quite often. It's just an odd design at the actual hip joint that tends to just pop out. Anyway, there's what we get all the way out to the back when it isn't popping off, and when we want to try and get the splits out of this, then things start to come apart a lot. And I mean a lot. I can pull off the splits, but this fell to pieces, and I will mention if I tried this with my Deathscythe Hell by Bandai, it would have done something fairly similar as well. Seeing as the leg's off, we might as well continue on from here. There is the bend at the knee, so it is your typical Master Grade Endless Waltz double knee bend. However, the armor at the knee here separates out ever so slightly. Not in any kind of dramatic way, not necessarily in any kind of pretty way, but it does separate out a little when bent. Once we get that foot on the ground to test that functional movement, there it is all the way to the front at the ankle, all the way to the back, and there is the side to side pivot, so a little bit restricted. As for the foot itself, it doesn't really have anything that moves besides the toe, but the minute that I move this, it just popped right off. So yeah, I would count that as a nothing. So when it comes to the articulation on the Dragon Momoko Deathscythe Hell right here, it's pretty much what we would have seen with the Endless Waltz kits by Bandai, so quite limited. However, this has some new aspects which makes it, well, very stiff, awkward, and a little bit janky. So that does mean it's not the greatest posing experience by any margin whatsoever. So when it comes to the Dragon Momoko 1/100 scale, Gundam DeathScyThe Hell, this is definitely a kit not for beginners. You need some intermediary skills at least. You need to be able to drill some pegs, glue some parts, and fix all the bits that need some fixing. But even beyond that, there's some things that you're not really going to fix. There's a lot of cosmetic issues. The plastic is not the greatest by any margin, but at the same time, it is not the worst. This kit does need a lot of reinforcement here and there, and at the end of the day, all you get is a kit that is an absolute looker. So if that is what you want, a kit that looks beautiful up on a shelf, looks cool, and has that classic DeathScythe, gnarly, savage feel, then this is fantastic. But if you want a kit for posing, playing around with, or just to enjoy the snapped build of, this is not it. Also, I will mention there is some questionable stuff all over the runners, and yeah, I'm kind of torn between saying, hey, if you feel like getting one, get one, and maybe this is something you should avoid. I guess that's only a decision you can make yourself. So as always, thank you so much for watching, and thanks so much to NordPass for sponsoring this video and supporting the channel. As always, make sure to come back for more gunpla reviews, and I mean real gunpla reviews, and I'll see you next time. As always, none of these videos would be possible without each and every one of you guys watching this video right now, and my special thanks to those who are helping out over on the channel memberships and on Patreon, including Gunpla UK Limited, or G59061, Joe Forsetti, Joseph Kukluk, Lauren Seahack, Global Frequency Studios, Van Fawn, Caleb Engelhart,